Fighting nail, board, and tooth, posted by Modern Man 09. There's a final update to this story as well. For context, my parents have lived in the same house since 2001. Before that, the house was owned by my father's sister. So, the home has been owned by my family since 1990. These are townhomes/condominiums. My father is a disabled person. I live on the other side of the country, but I'm staying with my dad until he is better. In late September, my dad had a stroke. He is still currently in a rehabilitation center working on his gross and fine motor skills. My father has been disabled since 2012, and this is his second major stroke. When this all happened, my uncle and I approached the HOA board about installing a ramp since he now requires a wheelchair to get around. At this time, the HOA informed us that my father was behind in his HOA fees. Big frickin' whoop. We paid them off and submitted the form to have the HOA approve the ramp construction. Once this was submitted, the stupid questions started. First off, is there any way for him to live without the ramp? Well, we had to re-explain what happened and why the ramp was medically necessary. He is currently only able to get up steps with the assistance of several people. Secondly, can his HOA violations be dealt with before the construction of the ramp is started? Well, he has 4 HOA violations that will require much more construction than time allowed. I told them no, but we would work on the violations after we got past this. Next, they said, is there any way the ramp could not encroach on the community area? Well, since the community is townhomes and condominiums, except for the inside of the home, stoop, and the back patio on each home, all the homeowners share ownership of the land. We explained how that would be impossible. We then had to explain how wheelchairs had wheels and that if the ramp was too steep, he would not be able to make it up. Is there any way you can ensure that the children don't play on the ramp? At this point, we got angry and told the board that there was no way for us personally to stop children from playing on the ramp, and they should control their own children. After this, they called us to discuss their last concern, which was, how will you ensure this will not reduce the valuation of all of our homes? We don't want our community to look like low-income housing. At this time, we had to just start throwing ADA and fair housing regulations at the board until they approved the ramp. For further information, half of the houses in the neighborhood are specifically set aside for Section 8 housing. While happy that they had approved the ramp, it only got worse. My uncle, cousin, and I have been building the ramp as fast as we can. This has meant, as we have stopped each night, they will take pictures of the semi-built structure and log it as a new violation. Thankfully, because we do have approved forms, I can get them resolved without much hassle. My uncle is a terminally ill cancer patient, and each night after I'm done building the ramp and going to check in on my dad in his rehab, I have to log onto my work laptop and do work to ensure that I can afford any costs that come up. Thankfully, my uncle is a retired government construction surveyor for ADA and fair housing occupancy, and I am an ASSP/OSHA safety professional, but all of this has been daunting. My dad comes home on Sunday, but I am terrified of further issues. An update. Hi all, thanks for all the advice. I appreciate it. The ramp is complete and he is home now. To answer a few questions and clarify. The ramp construction took some time because my uncle is guiding my cousin and I through the construction, and he is a terminally ill cancer patient. He is currently 3 years into a 3 to 5 expectancy, so we don't want him to overdo it. Next, I'm not sure where someone got that I was a girl, but I am a boy. I am my father's only son. I have seen this post being in contact with the news, lawyers, and a disability rights group. Neighbor committed arson on my property and police are not recommending charges. What can I do? Posted by Annoyed Catfish. We're in Texas, outside of city limits. This situation is complicated due to ongoing harassment. I'll try to add enough context for background leading up to the actual event and how the county sheriff's office has responded. Our neighbor has been harassing us for years. We've repeatedly asked them not to contact us and filed multiple police reports on recommendation from our lawyer to document his harassment, resulting in the sheriff's office telling us that it's a civil matter and not criminal, so there was nothing they could do. About a year ago, we filed a civil lawsuit for harassment with hours of video footage. The list includes stalking, defamation, threatening to kill our dogs, conspiring with someone to file a false report in which they stated I was screaming I wanted to off myself after receiving text messages stating I needed to off myself, and much, much more. We have moved due to the last incident, which put us in fear for our lives and prompted the lawsuit due to the sheriff's utter lack of an investigation. 2 months ago, our neighbor came onto our property, which is a vacant lot adjacent to our home, and he cut down the majority of the trees and then set fire to them. We only noticed after the fire reached above the tree line, and the fire department had to respond. We have everything on video. When the sheriff responded, our neighbor lied to the officer, stating that he was the caretaker. At first, the officer was dismissive and thought it was a misunderstanding on our part. Then, after the sheriff left the scene, our neighbor texted us that we needed to talk about maintaining our land for the community. So, when the officer called us, we showed him the text and the video footage. We explained that we have a criminal trespass warning against him and that he has never been the caretaker. They said they would recommend a warrant for arson, specifically because he lied to the responding officer. 2 months go by, and the case is still unassigned. We've called multiple times a week, and nothing has happened. Yesterday, we finally got a detective assigned, and they told us this was a neighbor squabble and would not recommend charges to the DA. We are beyond frustrated at this point. We have the civil lawsuit, in which we're now seeking additional damages for the arson, but how do we prevent our neighbor from causing any additional damage or committing criminal acts against us, since the sheriff's office refuses to do anything? Can we contact the DA? Should we go to news stations to draw attention to the sheriff's negligence in investigating the crime? We are in desperate need of help and advice. I have a call scheduled with our lawyer, but I'm trying to understand our rights and if there's any recourse. Do you think OP should lawyer up for this one? FHOA, first violation for dirty siding, posted by the Real Jubilee. I am unnaturally angry right now and I need to vent. Today, I received a first notice violation because the siding on the side of our end of our group townhome is dirty and needs pressure washing. I actually agree that it needs to be done and I plan on it, but it simply has not been the priority for me. In all honesty, it's not that bad. You can't even tell it's dirty at a distance of 15 to 20 feet. But those are the rules, so I'll abide. But why am I angry, you ask? Well, they are citing community aesthetics, and that's what set me off. Our HOA dues cover full lawn maintenance, not the bushes and gardens, just the grass, which includes regular mowing and fertilizing for a lush yard. But all season, I haven't had grass. I've only had weeds, white clover, and no lush grass at all. Now, I probably waited too long to report this to the property manager, but I finally did 5 weeks ago. Here is the quick timeline. So I reported the issue, and the first response was a week later. Board member addressed this weeks ago. Well, I replied within minutes, what was the address? I have nothing but weeds. The second response a week later says, send pics, and I replied within minutes, pics attached. I got no reply in a week, so I replied and CC'd in the board. Hey, can I get an update on this? It's getting worse. The board member from above replied within an hour. Well, I took care of this. We have no issue. I replied within minutes. I assure you this is not resolved. Please come over and let's look together. And the board member replied, no need, we will address it. About a week later, I still have no info, so I reply back, hey, can I have a status update? And then the property manager sends back, will be discussed during our next board meeting. The board meeting was a few days away, so I figured I'd join virtually. Turns out, a neighbor is allergic to the fertilizer and told the lawn maintenance crew, which was subcontracted out, that they need to stop. So there are a bunch of issues that I have with this. So first off, a single homeowner spoke to a vendor and got them to change the contract with them on the fly for her and all nearby homeowners without speaking to the board, property manager, or her neighbors. The lawn maintenance company appeased her without speaking to the board, property manager, or adjusting the cost in the contract. paying for fertilizer, but not getting fertilizer. The board and the property manager have clearly not been checking up on the lawn maintenance. This is our neighborhood's single largest expense at about 23% of our total annual dues. So it's been a week since the board meeting. During that meeting, the property manager stated that she would notify the affected owners, explain the situation, and provide how they plan to remedy that. We have not received that information. She hasn't even sent a note saying that they're aware of the issue. But now, since the issue is much larger than just me, I backed off bothering them, giving them time to work. But regardless, here we are 5 weeks later with zero information and zero progress. While I do understand that the board and the property manager are working on multiple things at once, and this is likely being addressed behind the scenes, I feel it is an extremely poor taste to violate homeowners over community aesthetics when the board and property manager hasn't even maintained a basic community aesthetic themselves. Someone asked OP how positive they were that they were responsible for this, and OP replied, "Yes, I'm positive. I read all the documents before we moved in. Each townhome maintains their own exterior. It's actually very common in my region. I previously lived under a terrible condo association. When I say terrible, I mean the worst. Embezzlement bad. Using HOA dues to renovate people's units bad. So I'm very sensitive about the do's and the don'ts in this neighborhood. Sounds like you got an argument and a fight, OP. Hope it goes very well for you. My HOA is still trying to charge me $225 for old violations, posted by That's a Spicy Meatball. So I made a post a while ago saying that my HOA was charging me $250 for year-old violations. I made a mistake, it's actually $225, but I digress. Well, I called them after being ignored in the app messages for over 2 weeks and finally got a breakdown of why I'm being charged. Many people said they should take it up with the owner of the property, but to my understanding, the property management and the HOA are pretty much under the same umbrella, so I can't really do that. They said that the charge is a collection of various $25 charges for things like parking violations, trash violations, and weed violations. Violations that start at September 2021 and end at August 2022, all adding up to $225. These violations are ones that I've received, but I didn't know I was going to be charged for them until now. I've emailed them back telling them that this is predatory at best and demanding an itemized list and pictures of each violation, but I'm worried I'll end up having this taken out of my deposit as my lease officially ends in a couple of weeks. I'm guessing that they do this on purpose to prey on the fact that we would be too busy moving to try and fight these violations and get that deposit back at the last second. My question is there a chance I could take them to small claims court? What would I have to lose? Should I talk to a lawyer first? I could afford these violations, but I refuse to let them get away with this gross practice if I can help it. And honestly, getting under their skin would be great. Very good comment here says, I don't think you have a case yet, as you haven't been damaged. You'll be damaged when your landlord takes the $225 from your deposit, but your case will be against your landlord, not the HOA. If the HOA or property management company didn't properly notice you or the landlord, then the fines will likely not be collectible. There may be rules around the notice as well. Usually, association members have to be provided with a chance to cure or fix the violations before the fines can be assessed. You'll also want to look at the landlord and tenant laws in your state. There's likely a provision about when your deposit must be returned and what can be deducted from it. OP says that they're leasing under a company with a signed lease and state that it's the owner's responsibility, which is me, I guess, which I've tried to do, and I have complied and fixed the violations they sent me as far as I can remember. I'm just wondering if they have any leeway in this since they sent these charges for violations between 1 and 2 years old. And this comment says, no, you have no leeway. The moment you were given notice of the violation, it was your responsibility to rectify the violation, including paying any fines. Your lease agreement will tell you what fining authority they have and what will happen to any outstanding fine balance once your lease terminates. So OP is a renter. Should they pay this or should they talk to their landlord first? Are you ready for this insane Karen who breaks the law internationally and thinks she can't get caught? This is called Too Racist to Enjoy a Tropical Island and Ends Up Paying the Price. Posted by Fish Flavored Candles. Nice name. I was just reminiscing about the absurdity of the situation that happened almost 2 years ago, and I've decided it's too good not to share. I'll be honest, it involves a lot of legal stuff that I'm not sure I'm talking about 100% correctly, but I can assure you this story is true, as is the end result. This might be a long one, so buckle up. For context, my mom is a traveling healthcare worker, not a nurse nor a doctor, just to clarify, and we're from the US. Usually, her contracts last from 8 weeks to 9 months, and she's worked all around the States. This results in an ungodly amount of airline miles that she likes to gift me so I can visit her whenever she's on contract. I get a nice vacation, she gets to see me, and I get to see her. Win, win, win. 2 years ago, after I graduated and was living at my mom and her long-term boyfriend's house in a COVID lockdown-induced depression and existential crisis, my mother scored her first overseas contract on a tropical island for 6 months, from June to the end of November. I'd gotten a crappy job in my hometown to start saving for whatever my next step was. 3 months in, my mom realized the downside to being on a very small island where international travel to and fro was a pain in the butt. She was lonely. This prompted a very bashful phone call in which she asked me if I wanted to take a break from working and come stay with her for a while. I jumped at the opportunity and we made arrangements to get my passport renewed, and we booked a ticket for me to stay with her for the last few months of her contract. All of this context comes to the main character, another US-based traveler, also not a nurse nor a doctor, who was my mother's coworker. Let's call her Mary. Mary, to put it bluntly, was racist as heck, and she was not enjoying getting paid to work on an island with crystal blue water on white sand beaches. Why? Because she failed to realize that she wouldn't be treating elite white resort goers. Nah. Turns out, the people who tend to be treated at the local hospital were the native islanders. You know, the people of color. She was also a COVID denier, Trumper, and an anti-vaxxer. Really just a blast to talk to, sarcasm. She was so livid about having to go to a grocery shop surrounded by POC, not what she called them. Hint, it's a pretty bad word, I do not say it. It didn't matter that she could go to the beach every day after work and was lodged in a multi-million-dollar vacation home on one of the highest points of the island with a gorgeous view. Nah, she was too busy recoiling at the sight of melanin. So yeah, she hated being there and wanted nothing more than just to leave. She latched onto my mother for company, and my mother reluctantly obliged her for a time due to the aforementioned loneliness. The main conflict of the story comes when my mother's contract had begun to reach its end, while Mary still had a month to go. Mary fought tooth and nail to renegotiate an early end to her contract, but was denied. So what does she do? She just leaves. Like just packs all of her stuff and departs to the US anyway. No biggie, right? She just doesn't get her remaining paychecks? Wrong. Here comes the beauty of contracts. See, the contract she agreed to comped her lodging on the condition that she fulfill her employment duties. Since she very clearly had no intention to, the contract was therefore voided and the compensation for her lodging was promptly retracted. She was now on the hook to pay back this country's health ministry for the several months of rent they had paid to house her in that gorgeous vacation home with a beautiful view. I'm not sure how much it would have been, but I'm guessing $1 million at the very least. Mary was now not only a crap employee in this country, but a literal fugitive. But she figured they could only arrest her and charge her if she ever stepped foot back on their soil, so she wasn't concerned. She was mostly right, but that wasn't the only thing this country's government could do. They proceeded to ring up the good old US government, notify them of the charges, and let them take it from there. They couldn't have her extradited, but they could ask the US to flag her passport until she paid them or faced charges. So the US government said, "Sure, buddy, we'll do it." And they did. Mary can't leave the US anymore. She can't even go to Canada. She tried to join her friends on vacation in Mexico, but wouldn't be allowed to cross the border. So if you ever think you screwed up a job really badly, just remember that you at least aren't an actual international criminal who can no longer leave the country. I'm not sure why her racist butt even wanted to go to Mexico. I heard there's a lot of Mexican people there. Sued the HOA president for forcing bullcrap rules on all of us, and I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen, you don't want to miss this crazy story in the fallout, and I will see you there.